Welcome to the Romancing Like Swift podcast, where we talk craft and the business of being an author while fangirling over Taylor Swift. We're your hosts, Morgana Bevan
and Emily Jane. On this podcast, we'll discuss what authors can learn from Taylor Swift. There are many amazing Taylor Swift podcasts in existence. We know this, but our focus is on mining Taylor Swift's lyrics and business practices for tips to help our fellow authors excel in their careers. Today, we've got fellow Swiftie, Holly Darling, with us to talk through Taylor's email game and help us assess how good it actually is.
As the email marketing obsessed one of this duo, I'm just going to drop a little spoiler here. There are some things that we as authors should definitely learn from Taylor. Email marketing is not one of them.
No.
Welcome to the show, Holly.
Sorry, couldn't help myself but jumped in. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I have never been invited to a show that merges two of my obsessions so perfectly. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing from a lot of people. It's surprising how many Swifties there are in the author community.
It's not to me. She's such a great storyteller. Of course, she's the musician we all love.
Yeah, it's good. The other thing I should say is I've considered Holly my unofficial mentor from even like before I started publishing. My emails are in the state they're in because I follow Holly's tips from day one. So I'm excited to see if I can learn something new.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think you will, because I think you already know it's pretty obvious to the big things that she's doing, but also there are some really good things that she's doing that you as an email marketing human that knows about the back end stuff, there are some magical things that are actually happening, and we can get into it despite the things that are also happening that could really kind of hurt the regular email. So I have lots of theories and things that are happening. Yeah.
But before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and how you found yourself as one of the industry gurus for email?
Sure. Yes. I have been a writer, a self-published writer since 2016. And prior to that, just a random writer. But I love storytelling. I love writing. And I found it was a natural progression to transfer that into the majority of my marketing in emails because it feels super organic to me. However, what I did find out was assumptions are probably, and knowing that assumptions are the things that hurt entrepreneurs the most, my assumption was completely wrong, that most authors absolutely hate writing emails. And I found that really fascinating. So I started to dive into what was it about them that they didn't like. And as more and more people started to ask me for help and questions about emails, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna make this a business because I love it so much. And yeah, I found that there are some real common denominators with authors and emails. And I'm just passionate about teaching them that they really do have everything it takes to be the best storytellers inside of their marketing, and that emails are, in my humble opinion, the most effective way to get a lot of what they need to talk to their readers about, because it's something they control, but also they can just seamlessly lend their voice to their emails, and it flows beautifully into their books. And with social media just being such a volatile space, I think more and more authors and brands in general just need to put more faith in emails. So it's my mission to kind of tell people that emails don't have to be hard. They don't have to be, they just don't have to be the hill that it feels like they are, but that they can be whatever they want them to be, but they just have to exist, and then take it from there. And I teach them how to kind of technically get an email together so that the ever-changing kind of Google algorithms and Apple algorithms accept their emails and deliver them. And that's kind of where I like to live, in the deliverability space.
Which I think is going to be quite a bit of a focus for this episode.
Just for the listener who is the email reluctant, I'm going to make the case so that then, because I know there's probably listeners out there who are like, but here's all the reasons why it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing I'm going to say is that I feel like for a lot of writers, and you guys probably both know this, but I just feel like I have to voice the opinion. It feels so important. It feels like, perfectly encapsulate your personality and your voice and be charming and witty and fun and make them want to hang out with you all at once. And I don't know, that's what feels overwhelming about it to me. So I just felt like I needed to say that in case there's listeners out there who are like me, who are like, oh, sure, they can talk about how easy it is because it's easy for them, but it's hard for me for whatever reason. So I just felt like I needed to voice the opinion of the email reluctant marketer who knows it's important and still struggles to do it.
Yeah. There's so much psychology behind writing emails that is fascinating.
Yeah.
And yesterday I did a live workshop where I let the people that were there choose the topic I wrote about. And my point of the workshop was to demonstrate that it can be simpler than what you're making it, what you feel it needs to be, right? And the topic that they chose, because I just keep a running list of weird and wonderful things that happened to me and very boring and basic things that happened to me. And so I gave them that list and I put it in the chat. And the one thing they chose, which I knew was going to happen, was I had like a pooping emergency. And that was what they chose that I write an email about. And it was it was fun. And I'm like, I just wrote an email to my readers about pooping. I mean, but I said that also proves the point that you can freaking put anything inside of an email and tie it back into your brand voice and what you're and books that you're talking about or you want to talk to them about. And it doesn't have to be this beautiful, magical masterpiece. And I think today's conversation is a really great example of exactly what you could do just to be present, and the bare minimum that feels non-vulnerable. And I think that's the biggest piece is that the vulnerability that can come through in an email when you choose an email topic that has like every week if you want to write something that feels very personal. Um authors, as you guys would know, authors have a hard time like and artists in general like offering up the thing that they're creating to the public, and then you run and hide and hope that nobody actually ever reads it. You don't ever at the same time,
Yes.
you hope that everybody reads it, so it's like emails seem to be, from what I've learned over the last, 5 or 6 years, an extension of that vulnerability, that even scarier sometimes than novels, it doesn't have to be. And I think one thing I hope that I can communicate over all the times that I talk to authors is that it can be whatever you want it to be. I'm going to teach you the technical stuff that should be happening in the back end. And it's really kind of changed heavily over the last 3 or 4 years. But as we're about to see, all of the if you throw out all of the roles and just do like something else that feels okay to you, that works mediocrely as well, and that's fine. So yeah, I mean, I know though, I know. The mindset piece is the hardest one to get over the emails. They feel super intimidating because 'cause they're just so much more personal than throwing up a social media post where you're not really present.
Yeah, it's something that even I still struggle with sometimes is like figuring out what I'm going to email about. Because like you get there's the super clear ones, the release date email. That's clear to me. But then you dig into what you say. And a lot of my release emails get very personal. Like it digs into where the book came from and pieces of myself that might have gone into it. And some authors don't do that. They just go, it's live, here's the blurb, here's a teaser, done.
Mhm.
And then you get the in between stuff. And I can see why people do stall, but then you stall too much, and all you end up with is an email that goes out once a month that is full of author promo and too much information.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we keep going, what is your Swifty era?
Oh, yeah. So I loved this question because I have been thinking about it since you told me I was coming on here. And I was telling my friends, and I'm like, what do you think my era is? And they all automatically said reputation. And I said, yeah, that's always my gut instinct is to say, I love the reputation era because I'm all about I'm all about that. But I sat with it alone and I thought, what are my favorite songs? And none of them are from the Reputation era. And so I'm like, so what is it about that era I like? I think I like the person she is in that space, but it's not my favorite era. And my favorite era isn't one that not a lot of people say, and it's folklore. Like I
Folklore's
love
my era.
is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that album. I love all of the songs in that album. And when I write, there's usually a couple of songs in that album that I can pull all of the perfect emotions from.
Yeah.
It's an album with so much emotional depth.
Yes.
There's like so much variety and so much depth, and it's just so evocative. So, yeah, it's an amazing album. But I also like what you said about Reputation because that's a very transformative album, right?
Yeah.
Like that is it's like her coming of age as a woman and as a businesswoman,
Mhm.
as opposed to her coming of age romantically or anything like that. It's her transforming herself from the ingenue to the badass,
Yeah.
which is lovely, right? I think all women love something about that because it's so aspirational. But I agree, folklore is amazing.
Okay. Shall we dive in headfirst into Taylor's emails?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I before we got on the call, I sent Holly a bunch of Taylor's more recent emails, and Holly already had some of her welcome sequence stuff saved. So we've just kind of looked at what's available, and there are common threads that we're all seeing. So I guess to start us off, what does Taylor do with her emails? Why is it not a good idea for authors to emulate that?
Yeah. So outside of the opt-in, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Outside of the two opt-in emails, which what is one thing she does that is perfection, right? Is to make sure that everybody is legally on her list. After those are done and out of the way, which are two tiny little emails, it's just an image, right? The email is just an image and the image is consistent, and branded for the space that she's in right now, and but it is just an image. So that would be the one thing that I would say that I consistently say to people, like, don't fill your emails with images. And this is even like the extreme. It is just an image. Like there's really no text ahead or after. It is just an image. But what I find really fascinating and thought provoking to me, and I try not to go down into too many rabbit holes on this subject, is that, when I first signed up for Taylor's newsletter, which I love that she has a newsletter, and that it is easy to find and it is a big part of her web design, right? Like where if you get into her website, there it's easy to figure out how to join her newsletter. And there are cues to make sure that you do, right? But when I first signed up for it, it landed and I typically read emails in two different spaces, on a Gmail account, on a desktop, and these are all for study purposes, on an iOS device as well, just to see like on a different email address. So two different email addresses that have different kind of routes, just to see what happens with the emails when they go out. 'Cause that's not something anybody else really ever needs to do, but it's something that I enjoy doing. And all of the time, every time her emails are landing, they started, I should say, landing directly into my promo tab, which um, would be as expected. So when emails feel promotional, the Googles, Yahoos of the world decide where they're going to send them. And typically they'll have three options. The best option you're going to get would be your inbox, but that rarely happens with brands. But most often they're going to end in your promo tab if they deem them legit and salesy, promo tab. If they deem them potentially unsure, spam folder. If they deem them completely not legitimate, non-delivered. So they just won't, they'll hold them back. So it was coming into my promo tab. And what I noticed last week after I had been intentionally searching for the last couple and opening them and trying to like click on things, to see what happens is that this week's, or I guess we're in a new week, last week's email came to my inbox, which was super exciting for me, which proves the point that it proves and disproves my theories. Proves that if you engage with a brand or an author enough and you give Gmail or Google the signal that I like this, I didn't do anything. I didn't whitelist her. I didn't drag her over to inbox. I just wanted to see what would happen with an image only email. Last week was the first week. Now, admittedly, I have not been on her list for that long. I do have a healthy obsession with her, but I have a brother who takes care of all of the things Taylor like he got us tickets, he does all that thing and I just kind of here's the money or get this album, it's dropping tomorrow, or whatever. And I'm like, I just do what he says. And this was my first time going out on my own, and I'm like, oh wow, she has newsletter. It's so exciting. But the thing that made me really think was like, all right, so she has an image only newsletter and it is really hard. Like even Old Navy, who I buy from really frequently with kids, and I have kids and they have deals and the deals are always coming. And I click and open that and I cannot get that email out of my promo tab and into my inbox. So why did Taylor Swift's email that is constructed very poorly, technically, how was I able to get it over there? And then my like rabbit hole brain starts thinking, what is coded behind this? Like who is running like what system is this running on? All these different things. And do certain companies have certain pathways to become more deliverable? And I don't have an answer on that right now, but it is something that only last week I started to think about, like what size is her list at? It's got to be enormous.
Yeah.
And what activity is registering there and how is that managed and how and is it managed or is it just a part of a large corporation, like a large marketing space that has access to knowledge I don't have, coding knowledge I don't have, or just different things? Anyway, those are things that authors don't never ever need to worry about. But it is crazy that it is just an image. Subject lines are like, trying to think what her subject lines are. Let me just
She had one that was very, what was it? It was Happy National, was it the Poet Day? Was that
yeah,
it?
Happy World Poetry Day with a
Yeah.
little, I think her subject lines are actually really good. Like so there's so many conflicting pieces coming at me. They're simple. They have all of the pieces of a great subject line in them. Sometimes they have numbers, sometimes they have an emoji, sometimes they have one exclamation mark. They rarely have capital letters. Like they're short to the point and sometimes they insinuate there's something fun on the other side of that email. So I think the other piece that a lot of authors are always working towards is this brand recognition, so name recognition. So when it lands in, they are all of her reader or subscribers, sorry, fan subscribers are waiting for that email to come because the thing that she does really well is the consistent sending pattern, right? It's pretty much every week. It's pretty much the same day of the week. It's pretty much the same time of the day. And so she's teaching her subscribers when information or communication from her comes, and they're teaching the Gmails and the Yahoos and the Outlooks that there's tons of value. And that's where I'm thinking that coding that's happening behind it is just sending these such strong signals in such an amplified way that she can send an image only and it can find its way to an inbox pretty quickly because there is such a volume of people taking the same
Opening.
actions, opening it, and
Yeah.
never deleting it.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I thought I was on her list back last year, and then I randomly stopped getting emails. So I signed up again. I think when the last run of like Toronto dates got added, I signed up again. And that's where I've started getting the TS11 emails now as these special editions come out. But I can't remember seeing an email from her pre-TS11 announcement. So I don't know if she's only emailing when there's something to sell.
Yeah, I know, because the one thing that she doesn't do and that we've talked about that I think would increase her bottom line is like use these emails in an exclusive way, right? To build secret information, community, like all of these different things, or person to person that feels like a very personalized experience where it to the inexperienced eye, it's like she's speaking directly to them, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I think she has so much going on right now that every email can sell something and it doesn't feel spammy or like
Yeah.
she's shoving stuff down people's throats, right? It'll be
Well,
interesting to see what happens longer in the longer term.
and do we think that she can afford to have her emails be a little less personalized because she does that so well in other spaces?
Yeah.
She does that like personal touch thing so well everywhere else that maybe her emails can afford to be a little less interpersonal.
Yeah.
I think yes, but there's an edge to it where we're all dealing with this thing of you don't own your reader or your fan unless you have that direct contact. And that's where the direct sales movement is now coming for authors. We want the data. And with her taking charge of the re recordings, she's starting to act a bit more like an indie. Even though she has a record label that gives her all the autonomy. And yes, she's super active on Tumblr and TikTok and posting on Instagram and Facebook and interacting with the fans in those spaces for TikTok and Tumblr, but she doesn't own those platforms. If one of them
Right.
goes down,
And this is where you and I have talked about things that she can get away with that we as independent authors cannot get away with because let's face it, Facebook is never going to kick off or Instagram or Twitter. No one is ever going to kick her off. No one is ever going to like shut down her account. That's not going to happen because she's Taylor Swift.
yeah,
Facebook can shut down an Emily Jane account like that. And which, did happen to me this past fall. That's not going to happen to Taylor. So we need to set up like safeguards against that in a way that she just simply would not have to set up.
yeah. I do think that it's for somebody who is very fan focused and very Easter eggs. Like, can you imagine if she actually wrote an email and then you end up with like 5 or 6 emails deep and you realize that the album drops and she's been hinting through the entire thing at one of the songs? Like, that would drive
Well,
them crazy.
yeah. So I think, and that this is just my opinion, but I think ultimately what happens and what I see as a professional in the email space is that if you went to a marketing meeting, the email part of the meeting either never happens or it is never the hot button issue. Like, and if you say, oh, what about email marketing? They're like, we have spent all of our budget on social media marketing, digital marketing. Either she has tons of marketing happening, on the Disney Plus channel, like all of these different marketing mediums. But email is always the last one to the
Yeah.
table. And I think that there just may not be a voice that is loud enough, that is close enough to her, that has the opportunity to say, "Wouldn't it be cool if, and did you know you could do this?" And really
Yeah.
that you don't need to duplicate work. That work, you're already doing that work and that we can transcribe it, and put it in here and make it this really special, exclusive experience for your best fans and that we can customize it with simple like the simplest tracking methods, like
Yeah.
it doesn't take long and that we can make your fans even more, invested in what it is you have to say. And that it's incredibly shareable, even though that's not a thing that email has a reputation for, but you can easily share things like that. And she has all of that, those options at the bottom of all of her emails. Like, how can you easily share this? So I just think in many rooms, that spaces that I've been invited into to be a person at the table for marketing decisions, when I start to talk about email, I'd say 95% of the time, people's mouths are open and they're like, I didn't know email could do that. I did thought email was just annoying. I thought everybody hated email. I did, but mostly I didn't know email could do that. And that's email's problem, and it has been for the longest time, because it's not when social media came around, email just it stayed the same, it's consistent, it's always there, but it does not get the accolades that or the budget and it doesn't even need as much budget as a social media paid promotional campaign requires. It's expensive when you have a giant list, but not as expensive as buying ad space on socials that you may or may not see flourish, and they may fail just as often as they succeed, right? And that it takes tons of testing, whereas emails are just there, but they don't get the airtime.
Yeah, which is a shame. So my next question is still focusing on Taylor. If you were in charge of her email marketing game, what would you change?
Oh, well, first thing that I would change is her welcome sequence is only one email long. And she has tons of opportunity. It's always going to kind of come back to the same thing that the email space that she inhabits can do two things for her that are not happening right now. One, increase her revenue, and two, continue to grow and solidify her fan base in her fan base's loyalty to her, especially when she's done touring and this kind of era of her life right now goes away, and she can't tour forever and she will have to reinvent herself, and that email can be the space. So back to the welcome sequence, like when I got the one email and it's like, thanks for subscribing, make sure you follow Taylor on these social channels. But the link behind most of the emails she sends just heads you back to her website, right? So it's just this base link. And I'm like, wow, missed opportunity, right? Like I would like to go to each of those social channels individually. But then, let's go through the eras. It's like her entire brand is set up to send out a welcome sequence like nobody else's, right? Like, let's start at the beginning, or you can reverse engineer it. Let's start with now, and go backwards for all of Taylor's the stuff that she has re-recorded and released in Taylor's version. You could walk through the eras, in a
Yeah.
welcome sequence. So the first thing I would do would be send people into a sequence that lasts a lot longer with intention. And then the other thing I would do would be what we've already talked about it. Like ditch the images. You can have an image at the bottom or something like that. Like it's poetry day, but hey, what if you wrote a poem for Worldwide Poetry Day? You know what I mean? Like connect connect the subject line with a conversation instead of just an image. And I think have some sort of interesting and very unique and exclusive strategy with her email would be something that I would think about for let's slowly build this space, almost like a membership space, right? Like where you could use email to talk to your fans in a way that you can control it through words because she's just really good with words, right? And where they could get the message directly from her and they know when it comes and almost feels like there already are like very Swifty societies, secret Swifty societies out there, but this feels like they'd be like, "Oh, I'm communicating directly with the leader," or whatever,
Yeah.
and it just kind of is very kind of a missed opportunity to me, and also think that young adults or teenagers are not interested in email is a big kind of misstep as well, and where it has to be TikTok or it has to be whatever, where Gen Z, they all have email addresses. They all are looking at them sporadically. But if you teach them, that's where you're going to communicate with them and they're going to get exclusive information. And it's not just a picture or it's a picture with a little secret message or a private message from Taylor. I think it's in my opinion, a great way to continue to sell your backlist, like keep selling everything else that's there and pre-sell what's coming. Like she has been doing really well. But if Canadians were clamoring for a date forever and so angry and so frustrated. If Canadians on her list, so you segregate that way and sends them like a 24-hour heads up secret coded message, like I
Yeah.
loved my last visit to Toronto. I can't wait to come back, and you're like, click here, and it just gets them on this like 30-minute head of everybody else announcement, that it's coming out. it would just drive people to her list, and then her list would just start, you know, driving revenue and loyalty, even more loyalty than already exists, and excitement, right? Like, she can use it to build excitement with drip sequences, like, just a little she's so good at Easter eggs, so you can expand on all of those in like a little drip sequence where just the sequences are released at specific times with specific words and switch it up from your image. Because sometimes the image to me as a marketer feels lazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they all kind of do have that uniformity and that consistency, which is great. But I'll open it now and go, yeah, that feels like the same one I got last week, right? And eventually it has to change.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm at the point now where I don't really read the email when it comes in. I just see it and then close it out, and that's that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what you absolutely don't want to happen.
Mm. Particularly when she's running such limited time sales. But if that's all they keep seeing, they're not going to realize. If somebody is only on her email list and not tapped into the Swifty community on socials, they may not have realized that there are, what, 3 or 4 versions of the vinyl with the special edition song. They may not have realized that. And if every email looks the same, I'm gonna scroll to find out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or someone like a lot of people that buy her stuff are in networks. And so if people in the network don't know, an email is a really great way to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody knows. But also, it's like when you go to the grocery store and they've changed it up completely. It's a strategy, like to make you go, wait, that's not like it was last time.
Yeah.
And I like to have these structured sending patterns that vary, but are strategic in my mind, but to that they aren't the same every time. So every fourth email is a short text only email. I'm like, whoa, that's weird. That's different. And then you're like, oh, every time I open this, I'm gonna have a different experience, but has that thread that connects, that feels on brand, consistent colors, all these kinds of things, but it looks a little different and it's telling me a few different things. But it's almost going old school, which feels very on brand with her, where you go old school in this almost like a telephone type thing. If it comes in email, I'm going to read this email and then I'm going to tell my friend that open their email, whatever, because there's a
Yeah.
surprise in there or something like that. And it's just creating excitement, but also creating something that feels very special to the person that is receiving it. And all she has to do
Exactly.
is use their first name, and that's just a code. And all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I have done that. I have done that so many times, and I am a professional in this space." Where I'm like, "Oh my god, Obama wrote an email to me," like, when I was with him. And another mentor of mine who was very far removed from me and is closer now, but when I first got an email from her with it just said, "Hey, Holly," in the thing, and I'm like, "She finally replied to me," but it was just a general email, like, that she was sending to everybody, and I'm like, "God, I fell for it again." But I think, like, Taylor Swift fans would eat that up like candy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how much do they pay to feel closer?
Mhm.
If they were to write personalized emails from Taylor and a fan hit reply, it's another jackpot. Like,
Yep.
this is a lottery. It's a chance that this email that they respond to may be the one that she notices and comes back to, you know?
Yeah. And that sends so many positive signals on the back end to the email algorithm, mysterious algorithms, but like that reply, that will just increase her longevity, at being deliverable. And I think she is more suited than almost anybody on the planet to get those replies if they just kind of put 20% more effort into the email by even leading with the fan's first name, in
Yeah.
even in the subject line or in a little intro. And she can write an intro each week. Like one of the things is somebody copyrights an intro and it has the fan's first name in it. And through their ability to see if they've clicked on a pre-order or something like that, they can even customize it further. But none of that has to be like something they think about. It can all be coded to happen automatically, which it's so much easier. And these are the things that when I start talking about it, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's not hard. You just have to take a second to learn how to do it. And once you learn, it's easy and it works.
Yeah. It's the stepping stone to building the strategy because we do it as authors. When we first, brand new author, you tell them they need a mailing list and they sit there frozen like, why and what do I do with it?
Mhm.
So I
Yep.
guess it's the same thing there. Like, tell them they
It
can
is.
do all of these things, and they go, we're first.
It is, and I've worked with authors, like, who have names that everybody knows, and they're like, "Oh, I suck at email." Like, or I don't and it's because I don't even know what to do with it. I'm scared of it, feels hard, or, like, whatever, and I'm like, "Oh, no. No, it doesn't have to be." It just I mean, and it can be whatever you want it to be. It could be super short. "Hey, how's it going? This is what I'm up to. Buy this book. See you later." Or it can be something bigger, or it can be somewhere in the middle, but it just has to exist. But it is crazy. And not just like, yeah, like people like I don't know anybody that is as big as Taylor Swift, so I don't work with anybody in that space, but I work with names that you would know, right? And they're like, "Oh, no. Can I hire you to write it for me?" I'm like, "No, because I mean, I give you some frameworks and whatever, but it has to come from your voice, and it can take you 5 minutes every week, to do it, and it will mean so much to the people that are receiving it. And you're going to get some decent clicks if you start to really teach your readers that the best place to communicate with you is in and to learn really fun, exciting world building pieces about the worlds that you are creating is through your newsletters because you can get really creative with what happens there and exclusive and it feels special.
Yeah.
I had a thought based on something you said about when you were talking about how her brand, the Eras, is perfect for a drip campaign. And I've been working on rewriting my opening sequence. That's not what it's called. Like
Sure.
when they
Okay.
first join. Yeah.
Welcome, Sydney.
Welcome sequence. Yeah. I knew I had the wrong word there. Slowly working on that because it's, again, the intimidation factor. And I didn't know what to say, and beyond that first email, it was like, "What but it occurred to me while you were talking, and you're probably gonna be like, "Well, yeah, duh," that this is the perfect opportunity for me to slowly introduce the reader to my backlist, which is like, "Duh," but I literally had never occurred to me that I can have, like, a series of emails that are like, "Okay, hey, welcome to this cluster of books. And then the next email can be welcome to these books that are linked in this way." And I feel like my mind is blown.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Yeah.
Is that an obvious thing that everyone else does? And I'm
No,
just,
not at all. When I say, "What's your best-selling series?" and they'll say this, and I'm like, "And why aren't you introducing it one at a time?" It's the easiest kind of thing, but it's you the strategies are a whole different thing, right? We're often always thinking forward, like what's coming, how do I sell what I've got out right now? But especially if you have developed a backlist, even if it's just one, like, a couple extra books to 100 extra books, and it feels overwhelming, like, what would I do? And I'm like, choose your best selling series, and walk people through it. I know some authors who have large backlists that have people in the welcome sequence for almost a year because it's just like, let me just walk you through it, and if you think about it, it's smart because as a reader, if I start a series and love it, I really don't come out of that series for a while, so I'm like, that's what I'm reading, and I'm like a linear reader where I don't like to read anything else while I'm reading something. And you can assume that a lot of people on your list think the same way. And so it's like, let me just walk you through a series and there, bam, if you have like a 3 book series, 5, 6, 7, 12, you've got 12 emails that are kind of almost templated, right? They kind of have the same look and feel, and they can be delivered based on your knowledge of how fast in the romance space readers read fast, and other spaces they're a bit slower. But you can just walk them through your backlist. You can collect great data because people are more apt to open the emails inside of a welcome sequence, not because they're better than other emails, but because technically the signals are super strong for on the back end. So those emails are getting delivered more often to inboxes and promo tabs, which are the two most popular kind of spaces where people read. So if people have opened the email ahead of it, they're more likely to have the next email land in an inbox. So take advantage of that. You might as well just keep giving them emails inside of the same flow. Um, and then you can do other things like track the clicks. And when they first sign up to you, they're more apt to remember they have done that, not mark you as spam because they're like, yeah, obviously I remember it wasn't that long ago. give you information that they're not going to give you later on. Like maybe you ask their birthday, then you can send out a little birthday email, which I think Taylor Swift could totally adopt that. Like imagine on your birthday, you got like a special like song she records, like that's for everybody that has a birthday on her newsletter list. Like you go nuts, right? And it's the same song for anybody. Like everybody gets the same one. And maybe it's just like she's on her guitar and records it on her iPhone, and then it's the birthday song,
Yeah,
I have
how much would people love to hear Taylor Swift actually sing them happy
birthday.
like, for real. I mean, the song exists.
Yeah.
It's not like she wouldn't even have to do anything other than, yeah, like, record it on her phone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
10
so
seconds, and we'd be so in.
yeah,
Yeah.
legally, you can do that. If you've collected the name legally and asked them for their birthday somewhere in that early stages where they're willing to give up a lot more information than later. What kind of stuff do you like to read? Do you prefer if you have multiple pen names? If they say, I really actually prefer this, you can shuttle them into a different sequence that goes through that pen name. Like there are so many things that you can do in the welcome space where people are much more eager and less likely to mark you as spam. Get it done. I mean, start talking to them then.
So how do you get I'm gonna ask a stupid question. How do you get that information automated? Like, do you send them a form or do you just, like, ask them to reply and send it to you, and then you enter it yourself? Because the
Yeah.
birthday thing I love. I would love to be able to do that. And, yeah, how do you do that easily?
Depends on the email system that you use. So some systems have a birthday, what's called the field, where they have the code in the back end and you can ask them to click, they click on it and up pops like an automated kind of form where they type it in. And more often than not, it's in like a collection form, an onboarding form. So what's your name, email, birthday? Yeah, you just slide that in there and they'll ask. If it's kind of later on, you can do the same thing. It's really a function. I know MailerLite can do it pretty simply. ConvertKit, I don't know about MailChimp, maybe. Flowdesk, probably not. But there are ways to work around it if your email service provider doesn't have that as a data point that they can easily help you collect. It's just a matter of researching the code that you need to put in there, or you can put a Google form in. So tell me a bit more about yourself. Just link it off to the Google form, and that's where they put that in there. You've got some terms, privacy policies always that everybody should have if they have a website or they're collecting data and they're doing it correctly. Yeah, most people are I give my birthday out all the time, whether it's real or not. Sometimes it's the right one and sometimes it's not. But I would like birthday gifts like at Sephora or other places that I shop frequently because something special kind of comes my way at birthday time.
Yeah. That's something that's on my to-do list is to figure out how to slot that in and then get something queued up. But I think so going back to this drip campaign, right now every single bonus I have at the back of a book leads into a 5 email sequence. And the third email in that sequence always pushing the next book in the series. I hadn't thought that I could go back to book 1 and add an extra 3 emails that push them to the next 3 books in the series sequentially.
You can do whatever you want. But if you think about it, well, the way I like to think about it, because it can get overwhelming, is I usually draw it out as opposed to like stare at my tech tools and go, where do I want to go? I like to like put a big thing of paper on my wall and go, if they came in here, what can I assume they need to know? Where do I want to send them? And sometimes people get very intimidated by like the very large, I call trees, that have arms going everywhere. But like I just built a sequence for somebody in MailChimp of all places, which I don't like doing because it was hard. And they make it hard, which is something I think you should think about. Like, does this feel harder than it should be? Yes, MailChimp. Anyway, and we had them headed in so many different directions based on their clicks, and pulling in surveys are a great way to kind of see like that. And surveys don't necessarily have to be a survey. It's just in some instances like MailerLite and MailChimp who have these drag and drop surveys that tag people based on things they click, you can just use it as like a 1 question survey. Do you like fantasy or erotica? Do you like political thrillers or something else? And then it sends them off in different directions. But what's really fun is that At a certain point, you can also test them and then bring them back into, like, if they do this, shuttle them back to the top at this, or shuttle them over into this series and let's start that one, and away they go. And I have one in this side of my life that my assistant built that is the largest, most craziest sequence, but it is grabbing people from many different places. And in ConvertKit, it's a little like it's a bit more user friendly at having multiple onboarding points and having them do things and then merging them back together and then spreading them apart, which is exactly what happens. They're like doing this, they're coming in and everybody's getting this email and then they're going back out based on what they do. And then they're coming back in and then they're going back out. And yeah, and you can have some side missions, it's called them like, I call it choose your own adventure. Hey, reader, choose your own adventure. You don't know that's what you're doing, but you are doing it. And I like people being in sequences. It's easier to track them. Like the technical tools behind the scenes just have more functionality inside of a sequence as opposed to a simple straight up email. There's just more steps to tracking what happens in there. So some people may be in sequences of mine for a long time, and but they don't know it. They're still learning things. And on the author side, they're still like going through all the books. And at some points, you might start to spread those sequences out by 30 days, if you're just checking in, but they're getting another email in the middle or launch sequences or whatever. But yeah, it can get
Mhm.
complicated. And this kind of conversation can start to get very overwhelming. But if
Yeah.
you map out the journey you want them to take, there is a way to make them take their hand and guide them right through the whole thing.
And in that kind of situation, so like I've always taken the advice that if somebody is in a sequence, you don't want them to be receiving general population emails. If they're in a
Yes.
sequence for 12 months, are you excluding them from general population emails for 12 months?
Depends on the sequence. So, like, they might go through like a very intentional backlist sequence, like we just talked about. But then I want an automated, hey, I never got your birthday email. And I'm not going to send that. I'm going to send that maybe 30 days later. And then maybe I'm going to see if they want to talk to me over here on my other pen name. Those are and those are spread out like 30 days between. So yeah, they will get it. But if they're in a sequence where they're getting an email every 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, I think the top end, they're not getting anything else from
Mhm.
me.
Okay.
Also, like all it will do is A, annoy them. B, confuse them, and marketing needs clarity, and excitement. And you don't want them annoyed or confused. And if you're giving them more things to click on, and it happens to me many times with many authors, add in like a resend to unopens and you're really done for, right? Like people are getting like inundated with things. So it's
Mm.
much more simpler to say if they're in a sequence, they do not get anything other than the sequence.
Yeah.
Worry about the exceptions to that rule when you're kind of at a level where you feel very comfortable with whatever's like how to manipulate or the system to make it work for you.
Yeah. So for an author that's newly approaching email, not even if they're a new author, just generally they haven't touched email, they're coming back to it, they're finally ready to approach it. Where do they start?
Well, yeah. Have they chosen a system to use?
Mm. So let's assume that all of them have landed on MailerLite, which is where everybody seems to go, even though ConvertKit is much better and actually delivers your emails. So let's assume they're on MailerLite.
Okay. So
Beyond
the
that, I
first
don't
thing,
know.
yeah, the first thing they're going to do is twofold. One is they need somebody to send it to, right? So you have to make sure you have a system set up where there is a strategy to get people onto your list, whether it's through back matter, website, promotional collaborations, whatever that is. But don't equate the number of people on your list with the value. Like, don't, if I only have 10 people on my list, I should not be sending emails yet. So the two-part starter is get somebody on your list more than just you and start sending emails to see what works. How does the system work? If you have 10 people on your list and they all open, wow, you've got a 100% open rate. And the algorithm is like, woohoo, this person is amazing, right? Don't judge the value of sending an email based on the number of people on your list. Small lists can do a lot of really great things for authors, like establish your deliverability. So establish your like credentials in Google's minds, and they base it purely on your metrics, not on the number of people on your list. What is your average open, click rate, unsubscribe, spam, hard and soft bounce? It doesn't go based on the number of people there. So if you have a 0%, the next time you try to send an email, it'll be harder. It's probably headed to spam, right? So start sending emails. Start learning how to send an email. Start learning what works. Start learning the system. Don't not send emails because you think that nobody's on the other end opening them. Send them. And if it's easier for you to send a text only email, because those are so those are, in my opinion, the easiest to send because they don't require a big knowledge of how your system works. Write some text only emails like, "Hey friends, I'm working on this book and what's your favorite color?" Whatever. Away you go. I have lots of authors that are like, "I don't have time for email, but I understand the value of it. I'm going to send a really short email every week." And I'm like, "Great." And that's all they do. And sometimes they have time to pull in images. But like when you start to kind of compare yourself to what you think you should be doing, email becomes time consuming and intimidating, and it doesn't have to be that. So do what you can, start to learn the system that you're using and all of the things that it can make easier, and have an intentional pathway to get people onto your list so that explore all those options in a legal. Don't Please don't ever buy a list and then email people.
And the point of don't the or is it the builders that
Mhm.
just share emails? That's
Yeah.
illegal.
Yes. I mean, I get that those are attractive for people that are just starting, but it's really it will really sour your experience with emails and the people on the other end receiving your emails, and because Google has implemented so many roles that they are really trying to find, the spammers, the bots, all those kinds of and people they assume to be one of those. And if you're not, but look like that, it's so hard to get out of that email
Yeah,
dungeon, and so just don't do it. And don't do it because you feel like you wanna have 5,000 people on your list and it feels good. Like, it's not gonna do anything for you, and it's just gonna make you frustrated. So,
exactly.
yeah.
I did the builders when I first started. I spent last year doing 2 round robins. Very few of those people are still on my list because I follow Holly's practices of re-engagement and then culling anybody who is inactive every like quarter to 6 months, sometimes, depending on how on it I am. And my list is consistently stayed at around 1,500 people. And my open rates are consistently at 50% or higher. And if they drop below that, I know it's time to do a round of re engagement. And
Mhm.
generally, the people I'm cutting from the list are coming from builders. So, although it's slow to go the organic route, I wish I'd just stuck with organic from day one. I would have saved so much money.
Yeah. I make a pretty decent living from my organically built list. Now, I do like paid advertising with the lead magnet, and I find it works decently for me, but that's not a let's dip our toe into the email space kind of place to go. And I'm methodically and intentionally sort those people, like, who are you? Should you be here? No, you're gone, kind of thing. And for me, they go into a very kind of long tailed automation. Let me just keep them in there and see what the cost per, or the revenue per lead is working on. But both sides of my business will grow fairly high. And then in 6 months, I will have chopped a significant portion of them out. And I don't have a problem doing with that. Because I really like if you think of it as like your store, you're just not going to fill a store with people that are in there to browse so that nobody ever makes a sale, and like there's 5 people that are screaming to try to get through. And it's all because you're swimming against the technical stuff that's happening in the back end, right? And the lower your open and click rates are, the less likely you're ever going to get into an inbox. You're going to always be fighting against the tide. But if you ditch the 0%ers, your averages just by a math equation are going to go up, which means Google's going to be like, oh, look at this. They're improving their rates are stable or their average metrics are growing. Let's send more Gmail users. And they go based on a Gmail average, not so like if you have 10 Gmail people on your list, which most people don't, most people have more than that, but and one of those people deletes an email of yours before they even open it, and another person consistently has that email delivered to spam. The other 8 are going to head to spam because Gmail takes a bird's eye view of your list as opposed to a one by one. So you want more healthy people on your list to help lift all of the new people that are coming in so that you have a better chance of untested subscribers getting all of the stuff you have. So those are super overwhelming technical terms, but all you really need to know is that healthy lists give you revenue more often. Big lists do not equal healthy lists.
So with the TS11 pre-orders, we're seeing this consistent like same email thing coming through. As authors, when we're coming up to a release, how often should we be sending in the process to a release? How soon before a release should we start?
Yeah, I like to go 8 weeks ahead with making sure I'm going week by week. And at the 4-week mark, I switch to a couple times a week, but that is not to everybody, right? So here's where people get tripped up where I'm like, yeah, I mean, I probably send daily emails in a release week and immediately after, but it's not to everybody on my list. So those people that are like in the low kind of quadrant of effectiveness will get 1 or 2 emails. They'll get their regular weekly email, and in release week, they'll get like, tomorrow it's happening, today it's release day, and then maybe a few days later they'll get it's going up in price or whatever. The people that have proven and they're clicking and opening everything and they are in specific segments, like let's say it's a KU release and I have wide end KU on my list. If I've got an Amazon segment, which I do, I'm tracking like who clicks what, those guys are getting way more emails, but not every day, but they'll be getting like it's going to be in KU, make sure you are ready for it. It's in KU, like da 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 da, and just try to like slam them, with reminders, but I may put some variables into those segments. So I'm sending a lot more emails from the technical end, like as far as the algorithms are looking, they're like, oh, there's a lot of emails happening here. This is great. We love it. But on the receiver end, there may be people in there that are only getting 1 or 2. It depends on what segment they're in. And if I think there's segments that may overlap, I really try to use segments instead of tags or groups or whatever terminology so that I can make sure that if one person is getting this email, the other person is not, or they're not getting this email, right? So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. Like, yes, I'm sending a ton of emails in the 4 weeks prior to a release date, and especially in the 7 days ahead and 7 days after, but only everybody's getting kind of maybe a slightly enhanced sending pattern, but it doesn't feel like they're getting inundated with emails.
Yeah,
If
I get it.
Yeah, there's much more complexity to it, but I think that's a real like case in point, like where you really need to start segmenting as one of the things that you start to learn as a new emailer, get comfortable. And then the first thing I would love for you to learn is to start to segment your list. So sending emails to everybody on your list every time you send an email is only doing your business a disservice.
Yeah. My last question is what do we do in the time between releases? So, like, I'm noticing with Taylor, in my perspective, she is only selling. And we have this concept of trying to make the give ratio higher than the take. So, when we ask for a sale, we're taking from the reader. What do we do in between releases to give more?
Yeah. This is when you're doing all the brand building exercise, and where you can do a couple of things. I'm going to deep dive into a specific series in my backlist, or I'm going to surprise everybody and maybe do one email where I'm not asking for a sale. I'm just going to tell a story. And I've had quite a few authors that whose emails I enjoy receiving when they're just talking things out, right? Like, or they'll send an email from a character point of view, which really isn't, may or may not be selling something, but maybe setting up for something about to come, or it's from a backlist character, or you have taken a side character and you're about to make something out of them. You can do a character point of view. I like to go down to like 3 emails a month, 2 emails a month. I've tried never to be less than that, but those in between periods can be for the part of email that I think email is best at, and that is that connectivity piece, like, what am I doing? What am I up to? But it feels very, those are the overwhelming emails that people tend to like shy away from. So for me, I have like a very simple system where I know when I'm not in a release or a launch period, I am writing about 1 to 4 things and only 1 to 4 things and on rotation. So I'm not writing about the same kind of thing. So like work in progress, day in the life, a character POV, and I like to use as a side note for character POVs when I'm trying to think of bonus stuff. Well, let me write 2 or 3 emails. It'll be like a long-term project from a character's POV on like some maybe a side character that people love. Or I've had some people that do cozies with like a familiar from the familiar's point of view or something like that. And they use it as bonus, like shove it all together and use it as bonus material. So it's doing double duty. Anyhow, so there's that. And then I like to write books that exist in tourist locations. So I'll write an email about that I have been to. So I'll put my picture in, of where when I was there, like I have a series in Whistler when I was skiing or whatever. And yeah, so those emails for me are the most fun. The launch emails are very prescriptive, right? Like they kind of I duplicate almost all of my launch sequences. Like, and I put all of those emails in sequences with ConvertKit. It's super easy where it's like, and they'll just duplicate and change the books, like, and I find in launches it's less necessary to be storytelling and let's just get to the point and get in and get out with a few words that feel very custom and links that feel very intentional, like Amazon lovers only get the Amazon link kind of thing like that. But
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, like swapping it out so that an email to somebody who said that they read on Kobo could just get a Kobo link. At the moment, I give them all, so that's yeah.
yeah.
Emma, do you have any last questions?
Okay, I've been making so many notes that instead of asking a question, I'm going to review a couple of things for the listener who, like me, is a little more of an email newbie. I got, first off, make sure you're doing everything legally. That is the biggest priority. And then the second tip is get comfortable. Don't stress out about it. Don't make yourself a crazy person like I am prone to do. And then learn segmenting.
Mhm.
And that is one that I have no concept of. So I'm going to have to like dig deep on figuring that out. And then my next question is like, Holly, where can listeners find you and your amazing services if they want to hear more from you and hire stuff? Because I'm like, maybe I want to do that. Maybe I want to learn all the Holly wisdom in my effort to be more of a business writer and less of a flibbertigibbet. So go ahead and give that spiel for me and for everyone else.
Sure. So I have a website, holydarlinghq.com. It's in transition. So right now it's fully functioning, but I'm changing it, moving it to Shopify next month. So the Shopify site is almost ready. Then we will move that. But anyway, it'll always be there. So you can go there. And then I have my Facebook group, which is a private group. It's free. Come on in. There are lots of authors in there that are super helpful and myself. And so we have a lot of conversations in there. Obviously, when you go to my website, I would love for you to join my list. And I send out a newsletter weekly and sometimes and more often if I have something special to talk about. But those are kind of the big places. I have an Instagram channel that I sporadically use, but I'm trying to get better at using it. And I have a TikTok, but they're all under the same name, Holly Darling HQ. So if you just kind of use that to find me, you will find me in all the places. I do have courses too. I have mini courses and then bigger courses. I have 3 bigger courses that are specific to 2 are specific to platforms. So ConvertKit and MailerLite are my 2 most popular platforms. that I like to talk about. And so I can teach you how to use others, and I use others frequently, but they're not my favorite places to hang out. So I have courses on those. And then I have just an overarching email marketing course. And then I have these mini things called Learn With Me lessons that are very subject specific. So segmentation is a mini lesson. And they're $47 and you can kind of dive in and it gives you email access to me so you can ask me questions as you I also do
That's
audits. So if you have an email system that feels like it's a big bundle of mess, I'm happy to go in and untangle it and give you clear direction on where you go next as well.
So the very last question we ask on this podcast is, what Taylor Swift song are you obsessed with right now?
Oh, I'm obsessed with the same song that I have been obsessed with since the moment I first heard it and is All Too Well 10-minute version.
me
I
too.
I write to that song. I just have it on loop and I just in those heavy romantic moments, that's the song that always comes on. But even in my car, I'm like screaming it. I love that song so much.
Oh,
Isn't it
me
so
too.
weird how it never feels like 10 minutes?
No, it doesn't. Like it's over already. Again.
I volunteer a lot in my kids' robotics program, and the drive from the robotics shop to home without traffic is 10 minutes. So
Perfect.
that is like my perfect chunk of drive time when I am transitioning from robotics mentor back to human Emily.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Oh my God, I love that song so much.
Yeah,
Watch the
good to
video, listen to the song. It's like, oh,
yeah. Get to
yeah.
scream your lungs out while you drive the car. It's a really good one to do. Yeah.
What about you guys? What is that like Morgana, what's your favorite?
I think this week I'm going with Welcome to New York. It's just got that like something new and brand new and exciting is about to start happen. And I think I've hit that point in the book where the tour is about to start. So I'm like, okay, this is the energy I need to take in.
Yeah, isn't it great how music can really like I don't know. I don't know many authors that don't write to music, but I couldn't I need it. But and there are specific songs and then there are some authors that have the music always changes, but for me it is this I write a book to the same song through the whole book.
Wow.
I do that too. I find a song that has the right vibe,
Yeah.
and then I listen to that single song on repeat over and over again. And the amazing thing about doing that is that then you can, assuming you have a single song per book and you don't ever overlap, unless it's a series, when you go back to that book, like if you need to write a bonus material or you're thinking about doing anything, you can go back to that song and you are instantly in that world again. And when I wrote, because I used to write as Emily McKay when I wrote my farm series, I had a song per character POV because it was like a bigger world and there were 4 characters that had a POV, and so I had a song per character POV. And then when I switched from POV to POV as I was writing, I could change the song and I could instantly be in that character POV. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I like it too. I think it works for me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I've learned recently is only certain people actually pay attention to the lyrics of a song. And I'm finding majorly it's authors. Like there's a commonality with authors where we all hear the lyrics, and like my friends who don't write or have no interest in being creative, they don't hear it. Like so I'll be sitting there going, "Oh my god, she just did that," and they're like, "What do you mean she what?" You have to point it out to them. It's fascinating, but I get so many book ideas because of lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one reason I love folklore so much is that the lyrics are intertwined throughout the whole album, and that there is this story that is happening from like top to bottom, and that if you pay attention to it, you can find it, and
Mhm.
it's awesome. Like it's really gives me chills.
Yeah.
I get excited about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. This was tons of fun. So much fun.
Yeah, I'd say we've still got loads to talk about on emails, so maybe in a couple of months' time, I'll tap you again
Yes.
and we'll take
Yeah,
another
well,
part.
I'll pay attention to what she's up to and email and see if there's any changes too. I'll
Yeah.
email you guys and say, guess what, look what she did.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Holly. And yeah, we'll try and grab you another time.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
It has been months since we recorded Holly's episode because we're recording a bunch ahead of time. And so now all this time has passed. It's been months. And we were going to do a check-in and reveal/confess whether or not we have managed to update our email sequencing.
Yeah, which I have, but literally in the last week.
Awesome and amazing. I have not. Summer got away from me and just having all the kids home and all the travel and then all the book releases. It has been a slog.
While I was editing the episode, I realized that we recorded the episode in April when I was on Koh Lanta, and that's how long it's taken me. So it's now August, and it's taken me 3-4 months to actually do anything with what I intended.
Yeah, and I feel like I need some sort of master class or some sort of serial killer brain mind map wall that I could figure out the best way to do this. How did you break it down? Or should that be a topic for another episode?
Potentially. I mean, in the basics of it, I have 14 books. I don't have bonuses for every single book. I have bonuses for about 8 of them, maybe. One series, every single book has a bonus. I have a reader magnet as well. And then in my Rockstar series, I think about 4 or 5 of them have bonuses. So they're already set that. I already had stuff in and going. And this time around, I just mapped it out on paper because I was like, based off of talking to Holly, I'm missing a trick by not driving people through the entire series.
Yes.
So what I did was literally I mapped it out on paper. I went, right, okay. So if somebody enters, I started with my reader magnet because I was like, ground zero.
Right.
They've read nothing. Assume they've read nothing. I need them to receive the download, be introduced to me, be reminded to read the book, and then I'm introducing them to every single book I have.
Yeah.
Starting with the rock stars, and then I do the actors. That was like the order. And then the order of those emails changed depending on the book they entered on.
Nice.
But the email is the same. This is the good thing. I wrote that email once.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So I introduced them to a book in one email, and I reused that email across everything. And then I just had to write new first introduction emails, which was the serious benefit. But paper, like pen and paper, just figure out the route you want them to take through your series or universe and what you want them to know and how you want to do that. Because this is the thing as well. I already had these sequences and I didn't just revamp based on like driving them through the whole series. Every single email, aside from the one where I introduce them to me, is from character POV.
Nice.
Yeah. It took a lot of work.
Wow. Oh, that's a lot of work. Yeah. You should be really proud. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, very happy about it, but oh my God. So that's the thing. So it's a complete flip. And I ran this by Holly before I did it. And she was like, if your emails are going to look like that, then do it.
Yeah.
And I am 1 email a month is a backlist email from character POV.
Nice.
So yeah, it took, I put it off for months because I knew how long it was going to take. And it's done. Thank God.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to you. And I am a lazy slacker who has not done that yet. It's sort of on my master to-do list of my big audacious to-do list. But that list sort of floats from month to month with some progress happening and some progress not. So
what I've realized in the last few weeks, I wanted to be this person who writes for 2 hours in the morning and then does the marketing stuff.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is I can't split focus like that.
Right.
I'm the intensive person. If I'm writing the book, I'm writing the book for 8 hours.
Yes, I'm the same way.
Yeah. If I got to rebuild an automation that big, I need a week straight and doing nothing else. And we've had deadlines.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many books have you published since Holly's episode?
Maybe 2, but I've got 2 more coming up in quick succession. I have 2 books coming out in September, and that's going to be a little tight. I mean, they're both in the editing stage, but that's still tight.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I published 2, and both of them were painful. So a lot of stuff fell by the wayside. But I'd say hopefully our listeners have gleaned a lot of tips from Holly, and we're going to have Holly back on
Nice.
very shortly to talk more about email because this topic is never ending.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm super excited to re-listen to this episode because when we jumped in to record this, I was like, what is the episode even about? Yes. Oh no, that was such a good one. And why have I not followed up?
And I even sent it the link.
You did. You did. And I've been traveling this week. So
yeah, it was fascinating. I didn't put two and two together that some of my ideas for my revamp came from this episode, but they did.
yes.
While editing it, I realized.
Yeah.
So there's definitely so many tips to take. We'll keep this very brief, but like if you're not on Holly's newsletter or in her Facebook group, you need to be because she spent the entire summer working through her segmentations and she's literally just finished up a bunch of emails on re-engagement. And all of that is also posted into her Facebook group. And it's where I've learned all I know about email. Definitely go and join.
Fantastic. Okay, since we already ended with what we've been listening to, I am going to end this episode with an amusing Taylor Swift related story. I was traveling last weekend and I was in Mountain View, California for a conference related to the robotics mentoring I do. And Mountain View is where Google is located and it's 100% Google. Like every other building is owned by Google. And there's a lot of very serious, intense engineering types. So as I was getting ready to leave the hotel, I was playing Taylor Swift on my phone as I'm packing up my suitcase, right? And my phone's in my back pocket. And I leave my hotel room I'm trailing my bags and stuff. And I walk down the hall, get in the elevator. There's a serious looking engineer type guy there who's just kind of giving me a little bit of a side eye and I'm not paying attention to it. I get downstairs, I go to check out from the hotel, all that kind of stuff. And that's about the point I realized I was listening to Taylor Swift without my headphones on. And it's so much, Tortured Poets Department is so much the backdrop of my everyday life. I forget when I'm listening to it and when I'm not. And yeah, so hopefully that very serious looking engineer is a Swiftie because he got to listen to her along with me. I'm just in the elevator going downstairs, bopping along to I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. And yeah.
I love that you still messed up the title.
I know.
We're months on and you still it's hilarious.
We're months, I know. Well, it's like the part of my brain that it remembers it is like it's so tightly linked to Dead Poet Society, which was, a movie from my youth.
It's just, it's still funny to me that literally I resort to calling it TTPD so that I don't mess it up.
It's funny.
Holly would tell you to email your readers about that.
Oh, I should. Yes.
Yeah, just make it highly personable.
Yes, and remind my readers about the show.
Yeah.
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 If you ever see me at a conference or anything like that, because I go to a lot of writers' conferences, and I am just listening to Taylor Swift out loud in the world, please stop me and let me know.
I will. If you're doing your Author Nation, no, I probably will sing along with you.
Yeah.
Considering literally Author Nation is going to be me, you, Holly's there, Shell is there, Damon, Courtney will be there. So lots of Swifties in one place. It's going to be interesting.
We should make pens or those little ribbons that are like,
yes,
hey, I'm a Swiftie. So we can identify each other.
Yeah. I wonder how they get made. Something to investigate. We should definitely do that.
Yes. Yeah. You brainstorm what you want it to say, or if you're a listener, let us know what you think a ribbon would say or a pen would say for Swifties.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us for this long episode, but very informative.
Very valuable.
If you've developed a plan of what you're going to do to revamp your newsletter or even set up your newsletter, drop us a comment and let us know what you're planning to do because I'm very interested to see what changes everybody makes. And again, if you're not in Holly's group or on a newsletter, go and join it. She's going to be at Author Nation speaking on newsletters, and she tells me direct sales newsletters as well. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
And that's it for today.